Hey everyone, and welcome. In this explainer, we're going to take a really close look at the market DNA method. What we'll do is walk through one single complete cycle. The focus today is on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, also known as the DJ30. Our whole goal here is just to document how this system works in a real-world scenario. So let's get right into it.
So what you're seeing on the screen is a proprietary geometric system. It's called market DNA. Now, for this entire analysis, we'll be sticking to their official branding and terminology. We're simply going to follow their framework to document the process exactly as it unfolds.
The asset we're zeroing in on is the DJ30, and the specific cycle we're documenting is identified as DJ30 3_1. We're looking at the chart as of March 30th, 2026. Again, the goal here is purely to observe and record each phase of the model exactly as it's defined. We are not making any predictions.
So you might be wondering, where does a cycle like this even begin? Well, it all starts with phase 1. This entire phase is about one thing: identifying the entry points. Let's dive in and see what the model looks for at this initial stage. Okay, as you can see right here on the chart, the cycle's first phase has officially kicked off. This happens when the price gets to a predefined primary entry level, and you can see that level is labeled here as M.
Let's put some exact numbers to those entry points. The primary entry, that's M, is set at 44,817.9. The model also defines a secondary entry, which it calls PC, at 43,814.2. If you average those two, you get what's called a mean entry price of 44,316. And that number is going to be really important for our risk calculations coming up. All right, so now that we have our entry points, the next logical step is, of course, risk management. This section is going to break down the specific risk parameters that the model uses for this particular cycle. To really get a handle on the position sizing, we have to start with some hypothetical inputs. So let's just assume a starting capital of $100,000. For this scenario, the maximum allowed drawdown is set at 5%, which comes out to $5,000. And we'll say the contract size for this asset is 10 units. Now here are the specific parameters coming directly from the market DNA model for this cycle. The trapezoid time duration is 42 days. The third triangle domain is 6.34%, and the risk coefficient, or R, is set to 1. You put those together, and they give us a total risk domain, labeled D, of 6.34%. Okay, so based on all those inputs, the model then calculates the trade sizes. First up, the total position size works out to be 0.18. Then, this position gets split into two equal parts, and that means the size for each of those two potential entries is 0.09. Now, it is really important to be crystal clear about how these sizes are determined, so I'm going to quote the model's documentation directly. Both trade sizes are calculated using the hypothetical capital, the investor's maximum allowed drawdown, the third triangle domain percentage, the risk coefficient, and the contract size. All right, with our entry point set and a risk defined, it's time to look ahead at the targets. This final section is going to outline the potential price projections that are calculated by the model. Going back to the chart, we can see these targets laid out visually. The model defines three potential price levels to keep an eye on. First, there's T1, which lines up with the mirror or lower trapezoid line. Then you have T2, which is located at a point called apex N. And finally, there's T3, which is right at the top of the trapezoid. Here are the exact price levels for each of those targets. The first one, T1, is at 45,182. If the price keeps going, the model then looks to T2 at apex N, and that's at 46,246. The final target for this whole cycle, T3, is the trapezoid top, sitting at 47,284. Now here's an interesting thing. The model doesn't just give one single set of projections. It actually calculates two different scenarios. And the outcome really just depends on which of the entry points end up getting triggered by the market. It could be just the primary entry, or it could be both the primary and the secondary entries. So let's compare those potential outcomes side by side. In scenario 1, if only that primary entry M gets triggered, the projected profit is just over $2,200. That works out to a 2.22% return. But in scenario 2, if both entries are hit, the potential profit literally doubles to over $4,400. That represents a 4.41% return. And you can see the corresponding annualized returns for both scenarios right there too. So all of this brings us to the most natural question of all. What happens next? It's really important to understand that this model is designed to observe, not to predict. The next phase of the cycle, whether that ends up being phase 2 or phase 3, well, that will be determined only by the market's actual price movement. We simply get to watch and document what happens next. Before we wrap up, we absolutely have to go over a few very important disclaimers. First, please remember this is not financial advice. This analysis is simply part of public model documentation and verification. Leverage above 10 is prohibited. Also, do not invest essential personal funds. And finally, risk management must follow the provided instructions. If you'd like to see more documentation on the Market DNA method, you can find it over at their website, marketdnaedge.com. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.